She refused the marriage, so they whipped her. Then he took her without a word. Western love tales. Her family owned a little farm on the edge of town. Maria loved spending her days helping her parents with chores, tending to the small garden and feeding the chickens. She enjoyed the quiet mornings when the sun rose over the hills, and the evenings when the sky turned pink and gold. Life was not easy, but it was peaceful. Maria was known in the town for her gentle heart and strong spirit. She was not the kind of girl who sought attention, but people admired her because she always spoke the truth and treated everyone with respect. She would help anyone in need, whether it was an elderly neighbor who needed firewood or a child who had lost a pet. She carried herself with calm confidence, and her quiet strength drew people toward her. One day, the town stirred with unusual excitement. Thomas, a wealthy landowner, had returned from a long journey to the city. He was known to be rich, proud, and strict. Many families in the town saw him as a man of power, and some even feared him. Thomas had come with a clear purpose. He wanted to marry Maria. He believed that marrying her would bring honor to his family, and that she, as a young woman, had no right to refuse him. Maria first heard about Thomas' proposal through whispers in the town. People spoke in hushed tones, some with curiosity, some with judgment. "Thomas wants to marry you, Maria," said her mother one evening. Maria was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when her mother delivered the news. She felt a strange mix of surprise and anxiety. Marriage had been discussed in her town as a natural step for every young woman, but Maria had always imagined that she could choose her own path in life. "I do not want to marry him," Maria said quietly but firmly. Her mother looked at her with worry. "Maria, he is rich and his family is respected. Refusing him could bring trouble," her mother whispered. Maria understood the weight of her words, but she did not waver. She knew in her heart that marrying Thomas would mean giving up her freedom and the life she cherished. "I cannot marry someone I do not love," Maria said. "I want to live my life on my own terms." The days that followed were tense. Thomas visited the family farm, accompanied by his servants. He brought gifts and spoke in a smooth voice, trying to persuade Maria. "You will have a comfortable life, Maria, a life of ease and respect," he said. Maria listened patiently, but she did not give a single word of agreement. She felt her heart pounding each time he looked at her, but she remained composed. She remembered the quiet mornings in her garden and the simple joys of helping her parents. She could not trade that for wealth or power. Some townspeople started to take sides. Some whispered that Maria was foolish to refuse Thomas, while others admired her courage. The children who played in the fields would watch quietly as Thomas rode through town, his horse tall and black, and Maria standing at the edge of the crowd, her head held high. She felt both pride and fear. Pride because she had not given in, and fear because she knew Thomas would not accept her refusal easily. Maria's father tried to reason with her, worried about the consequences. "Maria, think carefully. He is strong and he has money. People will talk and you may face difficulties," he said one evening as they sat under the old oak tree near the farm. Maria looked at her father, her eyes steady. "I understand, father, but I cannot betray myself. I cannot marry someone just because others expect it. I must make my own choice, even if it is difficult." Her words were met with silence. Her father loved her deeply, but he also knew the dangers of angering a man like Thomas. Still, he could see the truth in her eyes, the determination that refused to bend. That night Maria lay on her bed, staring at the wooden ceiling. She thought about her life, about the sun rising over the fields, about the laughter of children in the town, and about the life she dreamed of living. She knew she would not give it up, no matter the cost. Thomas, meanwhile, was growing impatient. He sent letters and messages through his men, each one more forceful than the last. "You must agree to marry me, Maria. Your refusal is unacceptable," one message read. Maria did not reply. She knew that responding would only give Thomas more reason to pressure her. Instead, she focused on her daily life, helping her family, tending to the animals, and keeping her heart strong. One afternoon, as Maria worked in the garden, she noticed Thomas approaching on horseback. He was not smiling this time. His face was serious, almost stern. Maria felt her stomach tighten, but she did not run. She stood tall, her hands still dirty from the soil. Thomas stopped in front of her, his horse snorting softly. "Maria, why do you refuse me? Do you not see what I offer you?" he asked. Maria took a deep breath. "I see what you offer, Thomas, but I cannot accept it. My life is my own, and I will not marry against my heart." Thomas' eyes narrowed. He had not expected her to speak so boldly. Most women in the town would have bowed to his wishes, but Maria was different. She was not afraid to speak the truth, even if it meant angering a powerful man. Thomas turned his horse sharply and rode away, but Maria knew this was only the beginning. She could feel that he would not give up easily, and the townspeople's whispers confirmed her fear. Despite the tension, life continued in the town. Maria continued her work, went to the market with her mother, and helped neighbors whenever she could. She smiled and laughed when she was with children or friends, hiding the anxiety that sometimes crept into her heart. At night, she would sit by the window, looking at the stars, thinking about the choices she had made. She felt proud of herself for standing firm, but she also knew that difficult days were coming. Her courage inspired others quietly. Women in the town would sometimes glance at her with admiration, and even a few men nodded with respect. Maria's refusal was more than just a personal choice. It had become a symbol of strength and integrity. Yet, she never sought attention or praise. She simply wanted to live honestly, to remain true to herself, and to protect the life she loved. One morning, Maria woke early to the sound of birds singing. She went outside, feeling the cool breeze on her face, and walked to the small stream near her home. As she watched the water flow gently over the stones, she felt a sense of calm determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them. She would not give up her freedom, her choices, or her dreams. Maria understood that courage did not mean the absence of fear. It meant standing firm despite fear. Days turned into weeks. Thomas continued to make attempts to persuade her, each more determined than the last. Maria never responded. She kept herself busy, staying close to her family and friends, finding strength in the simple pleasures of life. She tended her garden, cared for the animals, and helped her neighbors. Each small act reminded her of her own power and resilience. One evening, Maria's mother brought her a warm cup of tea. "Maria, I worry for you every day," she said softly. Maria took the cup, her hand steady. "I know, Mother, I worry too, but I cannot live a life that is not mine. I must follow my heart, no matter what happens." Her mother sighed, knowing she could not change her daughter's mind. She could only hope that Maria's strength would carry her through whatever lay ahead. Maria lay in bed that night, thinking about her life and the choices she had made. She knew that standing up to Thomas was dangerous, but she also knew that she could not betray herself. Her heart beat with determination, and a quiet smile formed on her lips. She felt ready to face whatever challenges were coming, knowing that she had the courage to protect her own life and choices. The town continued to watch her, some in admiration, some in judgment, but Maria did not let their opinions sway her. She had made a choice, and she would honor it no matter the cost. She had refused the marriage, and she would not regret it. Her life was hers, and she was determined to live it with dignity, courage, and honesty. The days after Maria's refusal were not easy. The town felt different, as if a quiet storm was building. People whispered in corners and watched her with curious eyes. Some admired her bravery, while others worried that trouble would come. Maria felt the tension too, though she never let it show. She continued her daily work, tending the animals, helping her parents, and keeping her garden in order. But in her heart, she carried a heavy sense of unease. Thomas had returned to the town with a new determination. He could not understand why Maria refused him. In his world, wealth and status gave him the right to make decisions, and no one had defied him like this before. He called a few trusted men from his estate and discussed how to make her understand that refusal was not acceptable. She must know the consequences of her choice, Thomas said in a low, stern voice. His men nodded silently, knowing that angering Thomas could be dangerous. Maria knew something was coming. She could feel it in the air, in the way Thomas rode through town, his horse moving with purpose, his eyes scanning every street and every house. Even the children playing in the fields seemed to sense it, their games slowing as they watched him pass. Maria's family tried to prepare her, though they could do little. "Stay calm, Maria," her father said one evening. "Whatever happens, remember who you are. Do not give him a reason to hurt you more." Maria nodded, holding her mother's hand tightly. She felt the fear in their eyes, but she also felt her own courage growing stronger. The next morning, the town square was unusually busy. People had gathered, sensing something important was about to happen. Maria's heart beat fast as she stepped outside. Thomas arrived with several men, and the crowd fell silent. His face was stern, his posture commanding. He dismounted his horse and approached Maria. "You must understand," he said loudly, so everyone could hear, "that refusing me is not acceptable. You cannot choose your own path. You belong to this town, to my family, and soon you will belong to me." Maria stood her ground, her hands folded calmly in front of her. "I belong to no one but myself," she said, her voice steady. A hush fell over the crowd. Many were shocked at her boldness, while a few whispered their admiration. She did not tremble or cry. She simply looked at Thomas with quiet determination. Her refusal was clear, her spirit unbroken, and everyone could see that she would not yield easily. Thomas' anger grew, but he controlled his words. He did not speak harshly, but his eyes were cold. "You will learn respect," he said. Then he signaled to his men. Maria felt her stomach tighten as they approached, but she did not run. She had made a choice, and she would face the consequences with courage. The men were there not to hurt her cruelly, but to remind her that her refusal had consequences. The townspeople watched quietly, some feeling a sense of shame, others anxious about what might happen. Maria's family tried to intervene, but Thomas waved them back. He wanted this to be a lesson for the town, not just a matter between families. Maria's mother held her hand tightly, whispering, "Stay strong, my daughter. Remember, courage is in your heart, not in your fear." Maria nodded slightly, feeling the warmth of her mother's support. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the fear that trembled inside her. "Thomas," men guided Maria to a small open area in the square. The town was silent, the wind blowing softly, carrying dust over the stones. Maria stood tall, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She felt the eyes of the crowd on her, and instead of fear, she drew strength from their attention. She knew that she had made a choice for herself, and no one could take that from her. Thomas did not raise his voice. He simply spoke, explaining what would happen if anyone in the town challenged his authority. His words were firm but measured, and the townspeople listened with quiet fear. Maria felt the weight of their expectations and the danger surrounding her, but she did not look away. She remembered the mornings in her garden, the animals she cared for, and the small joys of her daily life. That memory gave her strength. The men with Thomas carried out their task carefully, ensuring that Maria felt the seriousness of the situation but not causing harm that would leave permanent damage. Maria's heart pounded with pain, but she held her head high. She did not scream or cry. Her silent courage spoke louder than words, and many in the crowd were moved by her bravery. Some felt shame for being part of a world where a woman could be threatened for saying no. Others admired her determination, knowing they would not have been as strong. When it was over, Maria was helped back to her family. Her hands shook slightly, but her spirit remained strong. She looked at her mother and father, who held her close, worried but proud. "You were brave," her father whispered. "I do not know how you found the strength." Maria only smiled softly. "I had to be strong," she said. "I will not give up myself for anyone." The townspeople whispered about her courage for days. Some were critical, believing that she had brought danger to her family by refusing Thomas. Others quietly admired her bravery, feeling inspired by the way she faced the challenge without fear. Maria understood that her choice had consequences, but she also knew that she had made the right decision. She had not bowed to pressure or fear. She had stood for herself, and that was worth everything. Thomas did not give up. He continued to visit the town, speaking to his men and sending messages to Maria's family. Maria's heart knew that this was only the beginning. She would have to be careful, but she was ready. She had survived the first challenge, and she knew that her courage could carry her through the days ahead. At night, Maria would sit by the window looking at the stars. The memory of the square, the crowd, and Thomas' stern face stayed with her. But she also remembered her own strength, the support of her family, and the small joys of her life. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to face fear with determination. She promised herself that no matter what happened, she would remain true to who she was. Her family worked to protect her in the days that followed. They kept the farm busy, tended the animals carefully, and tried to maintain a normal life despite the tension. Maria helped them, her presence steady and calm. She understood that fear could paralyze people, but courage could give them power. She chose to be strong not just for herself, but for her family as well. The town continued to watch her quietly. Children who had once played freely now paused to observe her, sensing the strength in her silence. Neighbors whispered about her bravery and about Thomas' reaction. Some felt hope that one could stand against power without giving in. Others feared the consequences, remembering the harshness of the world they lived in. Maria knew that her choice had changed something in the town, even if just a little. One morning, as she walked through the garden, Maria felt the first signs of spring. The sun warmed her face, the birds sang, and the flowers began to bloom. She touched the petals softly, thinking about life and freedom. She understood that her courage had already brought her something precious, the ability to control her own life. No one could take that away from her, no matter how powerful they were. She thought about the future carefully. She knew Thomas would continue to challenge her, but she was ready. She would be cautious, clever, and brave. She would not act recklessly, but she would not surrender either. Maria understood that strength was quiet, patience was powerful, and courage could overcome fear. By the end of the week, the town had returned to a cautious calm. Thomas had left for a few days, but Maria knew he would return. She continued her work, caring for her family and the farm, tending the animals and helping neighbors. Each day, she grew stronger in her resolve, more certain that she had chosen the right path. She had faced danger without giving up herself, and she would continue to do so, no matter what lay ahead. Maria's courage was not loud or aggressive. It was steady, quiet, and unyielding. She had stood firm in the face of fear, and that made her stronger than anyone could imagine. The townspeople who had witnessed her strength would remember it for years, and some would find inspiration in her quiet defiance. Maria herself would carry it in her heart forever, knowing that she had protected the most important thing in the world, her freedom and her own choice. The days after the punishment were tense for Maria. Though she had stood firm in the town square, she knew Thomas' anger had not disappeared. The air felt heavier than before, and the usual sounds of the town, the clatter of horseshoes, the chatter of neighbors, and the children's laughter, seemed quieter, as if everyone was holding their breath. Maria tried to continue her life as usual, tending the animals, working in the garden, and helping her parents. But deep inside, she felt a growing sense of danger that she could not ignore. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks, Maria noticed movement near the edge of the farm. Shadows stretched across the field, and she felt a sudden chill. Her heart pounded. From a distance, she saw Thomas' men approaching. Their horses kicked up dust as they rode, and their faces were set with determination. Maria realized immediately that they had come for her. She had expected this moment, but anticipation did not make it any easier. Maria ran inside the farmhouse and bolted the door. Her parents were frightened and her mother clutched her hands tightly. "Maria, what will you do?" she whispered. Maria took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She knew she could not stay hidden forever. She had to act, but carefully. Running blindly would only put her in greater danger. She needed a plan, even if it was small and simple. As the men arrived and knocked on the door, Maria felt a wave of fear and determination. She knew that if she stayed, they would take her by force. But she also knew that she could not give up her freedom. Her parents tried to reason with the men, offering words of apology and pleading for mercy, but Thomas' men were focused on their task. They had orders to bring Maria to Thomas, and nothing else mattered to them. Just as the situation seemed most hopeless, a figure appeared from the shadows. Daniel, a young man from the neighboring town, had been watching quietly for days. He had admired Maria from afar, respecting her courage and kindness, and he had seen Thomas growing anger. Daniel had prepared himself carefully, knowing that the right moment to act might come at any time. Without a word, he moved toward the farmhouse with a calm and steady pace. Daniel's sudden appearance surprised Thomas' men. They hesitated, unsure of his intentions. Maria, seeing the opportunity, grabbed a small bag with a few belongings, food and water. Her hands shook slightly, but she did not falter. Daniel nodded once, silently telling her to follow him. Maria ran to him, keeping low to avoid being noticed, and together they moved quickly toward the edge of the woods near the farm. The ride through the woods was tense and silent. Daniel guided Maria through narrow paths, avoiding roads and clearings where Thomas' men might spot them. The forest was dark, but Maria felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in days, she felt that she had a chance to escape the danger that had surrounded her. She trusted Daniel because she could see the care and determination in his eyes. He did not speak much, but every movement was deliberate and protective. As they moved deeper into the woods, Maria's heart began to calm. She realized that her courage and Daniel's help had brought her this far. The pain and fear she had felt in the town square, the tension of the past weeks, and the pressure from Thomas' family, all of it had led to this moment. She was free, at least for now, and she vowed to protect that freedom at all costs. Daniel eventually led Maria to a small, hidden cabin in the forest. It was simple, with wooden walls, a small fireplace, and a few basic furnishings. He had prepared it as a safe place for her in case Thomas' men came looking. Maria felt a wave of gratitude and relief. She finally had a place to rest, to recover, and to plan her next steps. She knew she could not stay forever, but for now, she could breathe. The days in the cabin passed quietly. Daniel brought food and water, and Maria tended to the small garden outside. She learned that Daniel had long opposed Thomas' unfair treatment of people in the town. He admired Maria's courage and had wanted to help her, but he waited for the right moment to act. As they spent time together, Maria began to trust him more. She saw that he was patient, brave, and kind, qualities that made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced before. During these days, Maria reflected on her life. She thought about her family, the quiet mornings in the garden, and the strength that had carried her through the punishment in the town square. She realized that courage was not just about standing in public or facing danger. It was also about making choices, protecting oneself, and trusting those who cared. Daniel had shown her that sometimes help could come quietly, without words, and that trust could be earned through actions. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Maria and Daniel sat near the fireplace in the cabin. Daniel spoke softly, telling her stories of the neighboring towns, of people who had faced difficulties and yet found ways to live freely. Maria listened intently, feeling inspired and hopeful. She realized that life could be hard, but courage and determination could create a path through even the darkest times. Maria also began to think about the town she had left behind. She wondered about her parents, her neighbors, and the people who had watched her courage in the square. She knew that Thomas' anger had not vanished, but she also understood that running was sometimes necessary to protect oneself. She could not fight everything at once, but she could survive, learn, and grow stronger. The time in the cabin gave Maria a new sense of independence. She learned small skills, how to gather food, how to keep the fire going, and how to move quietly through the forest. Daniel taught her patiently, never pushing too hard, but always encouraging her. Maria felt a growing sense of confidence. She realized that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. Her fear had not disappeared, but courage had replaced it, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Days turned into weeks, and Maria and Daniel grew closer. They did not speak of love at first. Instead, they spoke of survival, courage, and life. Maria saw that Daniel respected her choices, never pressuring her or asking her to act against her will. That respect gave her a sense of peace she had never known. She realized that trust was as important as courage, and that freedom was not just about running away, it was about making choices without fear. Meanwhile, the town continued to whisper about her disappearance. Thomas, men searched for her, but they could not find any trace. Some townspeople admired her even more, while others worried about the consequences of defying a powerful man. Maria's story spread quietly, inspiring others to believe in courage, resilience, and the importance of standing up for oneself. One morning, Maria woke to the sound of birds singing. She stepped outside the cabin and felt the fresh forest air fill her lungs. The sunlight streamed through the trees, creating patterns on the ground. She realized that even though the path ahead was uncertain, she had taken the first steps toward a new life. She had survived danger, found help, and learned to trust in herself and others. Daniel approached, carrying a small basket of food. He smiled at her quietly, and Maria returned the smile. No words were needed. The bond between them had grown through shared experience, through trust, and through courage. Maria knew that together, they could face challenges, make decisions, and move forward with determination. By the end of the week, Maria felt stronger than she had in the town square. She had faced fear, survived danger, and learned to trust someone who had risked everything to help her. Her spirit was not broken, it was strengthened. She understood that life could be unpredictable, but courage, patience, and trust could guide her through even the hardest times. Maria knew that the journey was not over. Thomas' anger still loomed somewhere in the distance, and the town she had left behind was still a part of her life. But she had found hope, freedom, and safety for the moment. She had learned that courage was not only about standing up to others, it was also about standing up for oneself, making careful choices, and trusting those who truly cared. As the sun set over the forest, Maria looked toward the horizon with a sense of determination. She had escaped danger, found a place of safety, and discovered her own strength. The journey ahead would be difficult, but she knew she could face it with courage. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that she was not alone, and that she had the power to shape her own future. The forest was quiet, except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds. Maria and Daniel moved carefully along narrow paths, guided by the sunlight that filtered through the trees. Each day they traveled farther from the town Maria had once called home. The fear of being found still lingered in Maria's heart, but she also felt a growing sense of hope. For the first time in weeks, she imagined a life where she could make her own choices, free from threats and pressure. Their journey was not easy. They carried only what they could pack, walked long distances, and slept under the open sky when no shelter was available. The nights were cold, and the days were tiring, but Maria felt a determination that kept her moving forward. Daniel stayed close, quietly encouraging her when the paths became difficult. He never rushed her or spoke harshly. His calm presence gave her strength, and slowly her fear began to turn into confidence. During the day, they would stop in small clearings, rest, and eat what little food they had. Maria learned to notice small details in the forest, the direction of the sun, the patterns of animal tracks, and the sound of running water. Daniel taught her to find safe paths, how to avoid dangerous areas, and how to keep herself safe. Maria realized that each step she took was not just about escaping danger. It was also about learning to rely on her own instincts and courage. One afternoon, they reached a small river. The water flowed swiftly, but it was clear and clean. Maria knelt to drink, feeling the coolness soothe her throat. She looked at Daniel, who was checking the path ahead. "How far until we reach the next town?" she asked. Daniel shook his head slightly. "It is still a few days away, but we are getting closer. The important thing is to stay safe and keep moving." Maria nodded. She understood that rushing would only increase the risk. Patience was now as important as courage. As they traveled, Maria and Daniel shared stories about their lives. Daniel spoke about his family, his childhood in the neighboring town, and the work he had done to help others quietly. Maria spoke about her family, her life on the farm, and the quiet joys she had always cherished. Speaking about these things brought them closer. Maria began to trust Daniel more each day, knowing that he had risked a great deal to help her escape and that he respected her choices completely. One evening, as the sky turned pink and orange, they reached a small hill that overlooked a valley. In the distance, Maria could see a town nestled among the hills. It was small, but it looked peaceful. "That is where we will rest for a while," Daniel said softly. Maria felt a wave of relief. She had traveled far, faced danger, and survived the forest. Now she could finally see a place where she might begin to live freely again. Entering the town, they noticed that it was different from the one Maria had left behind. People greeted each other with smiles. The streets were busy but not crowded, and there was a sense of calm in the air. Maria felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She had never been in a town where she could be anonymous, where no one knew her past or her troubles. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine a life without fear. Daniel led Maria to a small house at the edge of town, where an elderly couple agreed to let them stay for a while. The couple was kind and welcoming, offering food, water, and a warm place to rest. Maria felt a sense of comfort she had not felt in a long time. She helped around the house, preparing meals, cleaning, and tending to the garden outside. Each task, though simple, gave her a sense of normalcy and peace. During the first few days, Maria explored the town cautiously. She walked slowly along the streets, observing the people, the shops, and the market. She realized that here, she could live without fear of being forced into something she did not want. She could choose her own path, help others if she wished, and build a life on her own terms. This thought filled her heart with hope and determination. Daniel also worked with her to make sure they were prepared for any challenges that might come. They planned routes for safety, learned about the surrounding areas, and observed the town quietly. Maria noticed that Daniel never tried to control her or make decisions for her. He offered advice and guidance, but he always let her choose. This respect strengthened her trust in him and helped her feel confident in her own judgment. In the evenings, Maria would sit by the window and watch the sunset. She thought about the life she had left behind, the town square, and the fear she had faced. She also thought about her family, hoping they were safe and proud of her courage. She realized that even though she had left, she had grown stronger and wiser. The journey had tested her in ways she could not have imagined, but it had also shown her her own strength. One afternoon, as Maria tended the small garden outside the house, she noticed children playing nearby. Their laughter reminded her of the days before danger had come into her life. She smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future that was free from fear. She realized that courage was not just about facing danger, it was also about building a life worth living. Daniel noticed the change in her and smiled quietly. "You are stronger than you know, Maria," he said. "You have faced fear and danger and you are still here. You are learning to live freely, and that is more important than anything else." Maria looked at him and nodded. She understood the truth in his words. Courage was not only about survival, it was about learning to trust oneself, to make choices, and to embrace life fully. The days passed, and Maria continued to grow in strength and confidence. She helped the elderly couple, learned new skills, and explored the surrounding countryside. She realized that the journey had not only kept her safe, but had also taught her valuable lessons about life, courage, and resilience. She no longer feared the unknown. Instead, she felt ready to face whatever challenges might come her way. One morning, Maria and Daniel walked to the edge of town, looking out over the hills and fields beyond. Maria felt a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. The world seemed larger, filled with possibilities, and she understood that she could shape her own future. She could live, work, and make decisions without fear or pressure. This realization gave her a deep sense of joy and determination. The town became their temporary home, a place to rest, recover, and plan for the future. Maria knew that her past would always be a part of her, but she also knew that it did not define her. She had survived danger, faced fear, and learned to trust herself and those who cared for her. She realized that life was not about avoiding challenges. It was about facing them with courage, patience, and determination. As the sun set over the town, Maria and Daniel sat quietly outside, watching the sky turn pink and gold. Maria felt a sense of peace and gratitude. She had traveled far, faced danger, and discovered her own strength. She had found a safe place to rest, a community that welcomed her, and a companion who respected and supported her. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope, knowing that she could continue her journey toward a life of freedom and choice. Maria also began to think about the future beyond this town. She knew she would have to make decisions about where to live, what work to do, and how to build a life that was truly her own. But she no longer felt afraid. She understood that she had the courage, the patience, and the determination to face whatever challenges might come. She had learned that freedom was precious, and that it required both strength and wisdom to protect. As night fell, Maria went to bed with a calm heart. She thought about the journey she had taken, the dangers she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. She realized that she had grown stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. She had survived because she had trusted herself, trusted Daniel, and remained true to her own choices. And she knew that the days ahead would be filled with new challenges, opportunities, and adventures, ones that she was ready to face with courage and hope. Maria woke early one morning, the sunlight spilling softly through the small windows of the house. The air was fresh and filled with the gentle sounds of the town coming to life. For the first time in months, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had traveled far from the town that had tried to control her, faced danger, and learned to trust herself and others. Now she had the chance to begin a new life, free from fear and pressure. The town had welcomed her quietly. The people were kind, friendly, and respectful. No one asked about her past or judged her for her previous troubles. Maria felt a sense of belonging she had never felt before. She could walk freely through the streets, talk to neighbors, and help wherever she was needed without fear. Each step she took reinforced the freedom she had fought so hard to protect. Daniel stayed by her side, but he never pressured her. He respected her choices and encouraged her independence. Maria realized that his presence was not just protection, it was companionship built on trust and understanding. She appreciated his quiet strength, his patience, and the way he let her grow at her own pace. Together, they began to build a routine that balanced safety, work, and the small joys of life. Maria helped the elderly couple who had given them shelter. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, and tended to the garden. Each day, she felt stronger and more confident. She also began to explore the town, visiting the market, talking to shopkeepers, and learning new skills. She discovered that she enjoyed meeting new people, helping those in need, and taking responsibility for her own life. The first challenge came when Maria realized that living freely also meant learning to handle responsibilities on her own. She had to manage money, plan meals, and help with the household chores without relying on anyone else. At first, it felt overwhelming, but Maria reminded herself that courage was not just about facing danger, it was about facing life itself. She tackled each task with patience and determination, learning from mistakes and celebrating small successes. One afternoon, while walking through the town square, Maria noticed children struggling to carry heavy baskets of vegetables. Without hesitation, she went to help them. The children smiled and thanked her, and Maria felt a sense of satisfaction she had never felt before. Small acts like these reminded her that freedom also came with responsibility, and that helping others could bring joy and meaning to life. Daniel watched her quietly, proud of the courage and kindness she showed in even the smallest moments. He had never expected that helping Maria escape danger would lead to such growth and strength. "You are becoming stronger every day," he said one evening as they returned home. Maria smiled softly. "I am learning," she replied. "I am learning that life is not just about surviving, it is about living and living with courage and kindness." Over time, Maria began to think about her future more clearly. She wanted to create a life that was fully her own, one where she could make choices freely and pursue her dreams. She talked to Daniel about her plans, discussing ideas for work, ways to help the community, and even small improvements for the house and garden. Daniel supported her, offering advice when asked, but always letting her make the final decisions. Maria also began to reflect on her past. She thought about the town she had left behind, Thomas, and the moments of fear and danger she had endured. She realized that those experiences had shaped her into the person she was now, brave, determined, and resilient. She no longer felt anger or resentment. Instead, she felt a quiet strength and wisdom that came from surviving hardship and making her own choices. One morning, Maria decided to help at the town school. The children were eager to learn, and Maria found joy in teaching them small lessons about reading, writing, and kindness. She encouraged them to be curious, brave, and honest, just as she had learned to be. Seeing the children smile and grow reminded her that life could be filled with hope, even after difficult times. Daniel continued to support her quietly. He helped with the school when needed, carried supplies, and offered encouragement, but he never overshadowed Maria's choices. She realized that true partnership was about respect and mutual support, and she felt grateful for his presence in her life. Together, they began to feel like a small family, built on trust, courage, and shared experiences. As the seasons changed, Maria began to explore new opportunities. She learned to grow vegetables, care for animals, and even help neighbors with repairs and small construction work. Each day brought new challenges and lessons, and Maria faced them with patience and determination. She realized that freedom was not simply being away from danger, it was being able to make decisions, learn new skills, and live life fully. One day, while helping to build a small fence for a neighbor, Maria paused to look at the town below. The sun shone brightly, and the streets were filled with laughter and life. She felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had survived fear, escaped danger, and built a life of her own choosing. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it with courage, hope, and determination. Maria also took time to write letters to her family in the town she had left behind. She wanted them to know that she was safe, that she was growing stronger, and that she had found a place where she could live freely. Writing to them gave her a sense of connection and closure, helping her understand that freedom did not mean abandoning love or family. It meant protecting it while also protecting herself. As weeks turned into months, Maria's confidence and independence continued to grow. She no longer felt the fear that had haunted her during her escape. Instead, she felt a deep sense of purpose. Each day, she faced small challenges, learned from them, and moved forward. She realized that courage was not a single act. It was a series of choices, made every day to live honestly, kindly, and bravely. Daniel and Maria spent quiet evenings together, talking about their plans, the town, and the possibilities of the future. They never rushed into decisions but took time to discuss, plan, and act carefully. Maria appreciated his respect for her independence, and Daniel admired her strength and determination. Together, they began to imagine a future that was filled with hope, opportunity, and shared dreams. One morning, Maria awoke to find the garden in full bloom. Flowers of many colors swayed gently in the breeze, and the vegetables were ripe and healthy. She felt a sense of pride in the life she had built, small as it might seem. Each plant, each effort, each day of work had contributed to something real and beautiful. She understood that life was about building slowly, with patience, care, and courage. Maria also began to feel a deep sense of inner peace. The fear of Thomas, the pressure of her old town, and the uncertainty of the escape no longer weighed heavily on her heart. She had learned that courage, trust, and determination could guide her through the hardest times. She had discovered that freedom was more than just running away. It was living honestly, respecting herself, and making choices that reflected her true desires. Over time, the people of the town grew to respect and admire Maria. They saw her strength, her kindness, and her willingness to help. Children looked up to her as a role model, and neighbors trusted her judgment. Maria felt a quiet pride, knowing that her courage had not only protected her life, but had also inspired others to live with honesty, bravery, and kindness. As the sun set one evening, Maria and Daniel stood on a small hill outside the town, looking at the world around them. The fields, forests, and houses stretched out in the golden light, and Maria felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had survived danger, escaped fear, and built a life of her own choosing. The journey had not been easy, but it had taught her lessons she would carry forever. Maria realized that she had everything she needed for a happy and meaningful life. She had freedom, independence, friends, and trust. She had faced challenges and learned from them. And she had discovered that courage was not about being fearless. It was about standing strong even when fear was present. She had embraced life fully, and now she could move forward with hope, determination, and joy. In the weeks and months that followed, Maria continued to grow and thrive. She helped the town, learned new skills, and embraced the beauty of everyday life. She found joy in small things, the laughter of children, the bloom of flowers, the sound of wind through the trees. And every day, she remembered the courage that had carried her through danger, reminding herself that she was capable of facing whatever challenges life might bring. Maria's story became known quietly in the town and surrounding areas. People admired her courage, resilience, and kindness, but Maria never sought attention or praise. She simply lived her life with honesty, bravery, and respect for herself and others. She understood that true freedom was not about avoiding difficulties. It was about facing them with strength, patience, and a clear heart. As Daniel stood beside her, Maria felt a sense of completeness she had never known before. They had faced danger together, survived challenges, and grown stronger in the process. Their bond was built on respect, trust, and shared experience. Maria knew that whatever the future held, she was ready. She had discovered the power of courage, the value of freedom and the beauty of living life on her own terms. And for the first time in her life, Maria felt fully, truly free. She had escaped fear, found safety, and built a life she could call her own. She had learned that courage was quiet, strength was patient, and freedom was priceless. She smiled softly, looking at the horizon, ready to embrace the days ahead with hope, determination, and joy.